Hey, welcome back. I'm Lauren Perreault, Managing Principal Broker at Fiv Realty. And before I got into real estate, I spent years in aerospace engineering and Fortune 100 manufacturing, which means my brain resembles a spreadsheet that occasionally says good morning. Just kidding. I'm actually also nice. I look at this market the way an engineer looks at a system. I want to know what the data is actually telling me, not just what happened this week. Weekly numbers in real estate are like a single temperature reading. They tell you something, but they don't tell you whether you're getting a fever or recovering from one. So I use rolling averages, 12 weeks of data at a time, stepped forward week by week to find where the real trend is and when it changed. Think of it like a noise filter for the market. It smooths out the static so you can hear the signal. That's what we're going to do today. Let's get into the week of March 9th through March 15th, 2026 for Portland Metro and Clark County, Washington. That's, of course, Washington, Multnomah, Clackamas, and Clark counties. And I have to tell you, this week's data tells a story with some real tension in it. Spring is showing up, buyers are coming back, and at the exact same moment, rates just jumped. So let's unpack all of it. First, mortgage rates, because right now they matter a great deal to affordability and to buyer psychology. According to On Point Federal Credit Union, the 30-year fixed conventional rate this week is 6% with 0.375 points and an APR of 6.089%. The week before, March 8th, that rate was 5.875% with a half a point. And 3 weeks ago, it sat at 5.625%. So we've moved up 37.5 basis points in 3 weeks. That's not a blip. A basis point is 1/100th of 1%, and 37.5 of them in 3 weeks is the market saying something. With only 5 weeks of rate history in our spreadsheet right now, I'm not yet running a 12-week rolling average on rates, but I'm watching this closely and I'll be reporting it every single week. However, the direction is up, and that's what matters. Here's why that matters practically. On a $600,000 loan, the difference between 5.625% and 6% is roughly $215 per month. That's not pocket change for most buyers. It doesn't necessarily kill a transaction, but it changes how buyers qualify, and it changes how they feel walking into a home. Buyer psychology and buyer math are two different things, and both of them just got a little bit harder. Now let's talk supply. Think of inventory like a faucet. The flow of new listings is what fills the bathtub, and demand is the drain. Right now, the faucet is flowing more than it was a year ago, but the drain is also running harder than it was earlier this year. Active listings this week, 6,026. Same week 1 year ago, 5,358. That's a 12.5% year-over-year increase. On the surface, that sounds like a lot of inventory, but here's where the rolling average tells a more nuanced story. The 12-week rolling average for active listings right now is 5,686 homes. 1 year ago, at this same point in the calendar, that 12-week rolling average was 5,116 homes. So yes, we're carrying more inventory than last year, about 11% more on a rolling basis. But here's what I want you to notice. That rolling average peaked around 5,949 several weeks ago and has been coming down. It's now at 5,686 and essentially flattening. The inventory surge that dominated the second half of 2025 is losing momentum finally. That faucet is not turning off, but it's not running as hard. New listings this week are 624. Same week last year, per the MLS data, 615. That's essentially flat year over year on a weekly spot basis. On a 12-week rolling basis, we're averaging 503 new listings per week right now versus 415 a year ago. So we're still running about 21% above last year on new supply coming to market. Sellers are active. But I want you to hold that thought because demand is doing something interesting. On the demand side, this is where the story gets good. New pending sales this week, meaning homes that just went under contract, 667. Same week last year, 616. That's an 8.3% year-over-year increase in new pending sales. And on the 12-week rolling average, new pending is 531 per week right now versus 484 a year ago. That's a 9.8% improvement. That rolling average has been rising consistently for 6 consecutive weeks. 6 weeks in a row. In engineering terms, that's not noise. That's a signal. Total pending sales, meaning the full pipeline of homes currently under contract, stands at 3,093 this week. 1 year ago, it was 2,826, a 9.4% increase. And the 12-week rolling average is essentially matching last year at 2,562 now versus 2,558 then. So the pending pipeline has rebuilt from where it was in the winter trough and is tracking at or above last year's pace. So, homes sold this week was 443. Per the MLS data, the same week last year was 422. That's a 5% year-over-year improvement. The 12-week rolling average on sales is 368 per week now versus 362 a year ago, about 1.6% better. Sales activity is modestly above last year's pace on a smoothed out basis, and it's been recovering steadily. Now I want to talk about something that sellers need to pay very close attention to: price reductions. This week, 611 homes in the Portland metro had their prices reduced. Of those, 292 were reductions of $15,000 or more. That's a meaningful cut, not a rounding error. 1 year ago, price reductions were at 516, so we're running 18.4% above last year in price reductions. The 12-week rolling average right now is 481 versus 434 a year ago, again about 10.6% higher, and that rolling number has been creeping upward for 6 straight weeks. Here's what that tells you. The market is not just one market. It's 2 markets running simultaneously. In the correctly priced market, homes are going under contract quickly, sometimes with multiple offers, selling above list price. In the overpriced market, sellers are sitting, watching their days on market climb and eventually cutting their price. The data are telling sellers, your list price is a hypothesis. The market is voting on it every single day. Now, let me give you the days on market data, because this is one of the most revealing metrics right now, and it tells a split story. Average days on market this week, 66 days. Same week last year, 58 days. We're running 13.8% above last year on the average, which reflects all those overpriced listings that have been sitting. But here's the counterpoint. Median days on the market this week is 23 days, and that's exactly the same as last year. The median home, the house that's priced right, in good condition, with good marketing, is selling just as fast as it did a year ago. The average is dragged up by the outliers on the slow end. That gap between 23 and 66 is your overpriced home penalty. And I want to tell you about the days on market trend from the Excel data because it's striking. In mid-February, average days on market was 84 days. It dropped to 79, then 74, then it blipped up slightly to 75, and now it's down to 66. The median went from 47 days in mid-February to 36, to 34, to 30, and now 23. Both metrics are declining. The market is accelerating. Spring activation is real. Yay! Now, let's talk prices. The weekly sale price data is the most volatile metric we track, so I always want to look at it in context. Average sale price this week, $613,776. Same week last year, $609,800. That's a 0.7% year-over-year increase. Median sale price this week, $525,000. Same week last year, $550,000. That's a 4.5% decline. At first glance, that looks alarming, but it's not. Weekly price data swings hundreds of thousands of dollars based purely on the mix of what happened to close that particular week. A week heavy with high-end closings pulls the number up. A week light on luxury and heavy on entry-level homes pulls it down. Neither one is a trend. The more meaningful number, the one I actually trust, is the month-to-date average for March 2026. $638,652 based on 992 closed sales. Compare that to March 2025, which was $615,624 on the same number of sales. That's a 3.7% year-over-year increase on a real, statistically significant sample. That's the price signal. Prices are up modestly year-over-year. The sale-to-list price ratios tell the rest of the story. Average sale price is a percentage of current asking price, 99.98%, essentially at list. Last year, it was 99.88%, again, essentially at list. Median sales price as a percentage of asking price, 100.95%. Last year, that was 100.01%. So the median home is still selling above list price, and it's doing so by a slightly wider margin than it was a year ago. That shows buyer competition. That is spring showing up in the data. When we look at the original list price, which captures homes that had to reduce before selling, that ratio is 97.6% now versus 97.27% last year. Also very slightly improved. So what about distressed properties? REO and short sales are essentially invisible right now. 83 active and 102 pending. That is not a distressed market. That's a well-functioning market with the normal fraction of hardship cases. So let's pull this all together and tell you what this data actually means. Not for the abstract concept of the market, but for you, depending on where you sit in this transaction. If you are a seller who has been thinking about listing, you have a window right now. Spring buyer demand is rising. The rolling averages on new pending sales and total pending have been climbing for 6 consecutive weeks. Your best competition, active inventory, has stopped growing and is starting to flatten. This is the closest thing the Portland market has had to a seller favorable inflection point in many, many months. But, and I need you to hear this clearly, you will not benefit from this window if you overprice. 611 price reductions happened this week. Those sellers thought they had leverage they didn't have. The buyers are smart. They have Zillow. They know what comparable homes sold for. Your list price has to be a statement of value, not a starting bid in an auction you hope to have. If you were a buyer, rates just moved to 6%, which is a headwind. I won't sugarcoat it, but look at what's happening in the rest of the data. Total pending is 9.4% above last year. New pending is up 8.3%. Buyers are not fleeing. They're coming to terms with the rate environment, and they're still making decisions. The homes that are sitting with the high average days on market and the price reductions, those are your opportunity. Sellers of stale listings are now more motivated. You have negotiating room on those homes that you don't have on the fresh listings. And here's a question worth considering. Are you renting and waiting for rates to drop? If you are, you're building someone else's equity while you wait, and you're assuming rates will drop meaningfully and the prices won't rise further. That's two assumptions. Neither one is guaranteed. If you're a move-up buyer, you own a home, you want a bigger one or a different one, you're in the most complex position. Your current home benefits from everything I just described about seller conditions. Your purchase benefits from the buyer side opportunity. The key here is sequencing and math. I'm good at that. Get those numbers done before you list. Now, let me spend a moment explaining why I track rolling averages, because some of you have asked. A 12-week rolling average takes the most recent 12 weeks of data, averages them, then steps forward 1 week at a time and does it again. Each time you step forward, you drop the oldest week and add the newest one. The result is a line that filters out the week-to-week noise, the holiday weeks, the freak weather weeks, the weeks where closings bunched up, and shows you the underlying momentum. If the rolling average is rising, the trend is rising, regardless of what any single week did. I've been doing this for 21 years in real estate and over 2 decades before that in aerospace engineering, and I can tell you, markets behave like complex systems. The trend is almost always more important than the data point. The key takeaway for the week of March 9th through 15th, 2026, this is a market in transition. Demand is clearly accelerating. 6 consecutive weeks of rising rolling averages on new pending sales does not happen by accident. Supply is still elevated year over year, but it has stopped growing. Days on market are falling hard. Prices, properly measured on a monthly basis, are up 3.7% year over year. The one serious wild card right now is the rate environment. At 6% and possibly rising, rates are putting pressure on buyer affordability just as buyer motivation is returning. How that tension between wanting to buy and being afraid to buy because of the mortgage rate resolves over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and that's the single biggest variable in this market. I'll be watching it every week. If you want to go deeper on any of this, if you want to know what it means specifically for your home, your neighborhood, your situation, reach out. You can find me at pdxhomesforsale.com, call or text me at 503-683-1885, or email me at lauren@pdxhomesforsale.com. And if you want to search active listings in real time, that's at pdxhomesforsale.net. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, Lauren Perreault Realtor PDX, because this data drops every week, and the next few weeks are going to be very telling. I'll see you then, and I hope you will subscribe.